Welcome to Beans and Breakdowns, a podcast dedicated to bridging the gap between specialty coffee and the heavy music community. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Josh Cass of the band Kawthra from the Niagara region. Josh and I, we touched base at a show that happened here in Montreal not too long ago. I've been a fan of their music for a little bit now and thought it'd be awesome to have him on the podcast as a fellow coffee lover. So grab a fresh cup of coffee and wake the fuck up. What's going on, caffeinated crew? Today I'm joined by Josh, guitarist and vocalist of the band Kawthra from the Niagara region. Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm well, man. How are you?
I'm great. I appreciate you hanging out with me. It's such a pleasure to be on with you this morning.
Yeah, it's nice to be reconnected. Like I'm glad that it was nice to meet you and not have it just be like a one-time thing and then never hear from you ever again. That happens so often with people, and it's nice when a connection can last.
I was really happy that we were able to connect at that show, and that actually the show was able to happen right before everything kind of went crazy and shut down for about a month. But I was really bummed that I had to leave earlier than y'all said. The rest of the band was like, Kawthra was the best band that played the whole night. They were heavy as fuck. So I was really bummed. We can start things off with the coffee side. What are you drinking over there on your side?
I'm drinking that bag of Balance that you sent me. I couldn't resist getting into that because the art's so cool. And like, I wanted to drink it so bad that I abandoned the other delicious coffee that I have from Black Sheep right now to drink this one specifically.
Yeah, I think it was called, the one I sent was Floreal, the Panama.
Yeah, it's a Panama. I was hesitant to say the name, so I wasn't sure if it was French or not. And my French accent, I've been told, is really bad. So
we're in the same boat on that one. I say French words to people all the time, and they literally think I'm speaking German. I've been told that before, that they thought I was speaking German. So
that's wild.
I feel you on that. Apparently I speak French very angrily, the little bit of French that I can speak. But yeah, that Balance is actually roasted by a friend of mine, Danielle. I think you also met him at the show.
Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah, and he is doing some awesome things. I actually tasted, he had an anaerobic Costa Rican over the December winter season. That was incredible. And I was really upset when I finished that bag, but definitely has very striking artwork as well, which I'm a big fan of. Mm-hmm. I am drinking the Black Sheep that you sent me, the Riddle Maker, which is the Ethiopian single origin. It's really delicious. I love a light roast. The lighter, the better, in my opinion. So definitely tasting a lot of, the fruity, the tropical fruits that it has on the bag. The first sip I took when it was still kind of cooling tasted like mango, which was cool. So I'm a big fan of this.
How do you make your coffee?
So I was going to ask you this as well, but I am a diehard believer in the Hario V60.
Okay.
I have a recipe that I have used for about 2 years now that I think gets me the best, most consistent result. I've branched out. I use AeroPress. I just got a tricklet recently that I'm still kind of finding my way in. But the V60 is my never fail solution for coffee brewing. Mm. What about you? What do you like to use?
I'm a French press person, and the reason behind it has nothing to do with coffee. Funny enough, my introduction to specialty drinks started with tea. Mm-hmm. When I was a teenager. I don't know why, but I tried different straining techniques, and a French press was a really great way to do it. So I also follow a really strict routine with making the coffee to make it as consistent as possible. There's a YouTuber that I stumbled upon some time back. I think his name's James Hoffman or something like that.
That's the V60 recipe I use.
This is hilarious. I use this French press recipe, which is like you just let it chill for a few minutes and then break up the crust and then let it sit longer as everything falls down. But I'm also just very fond of the immersion technique. I love watching it become what it is going to be. Mm-hmm. Something about that's fun to me. So it's interesting, like how you might taste a coffee that's like this one. With French press, I find it's like really dirty, which I like. Mm-hmm. And that's really effective for super dark roasts. And so with light roasts, I think it's not as effective to drink them with the French press as so much as a pour over.
Right.
But it's still so good because it really brings out the deepest parts of like that flavor. So like on this bag, it says like, I think notes of hazelnut, but oh my gosh, how do you describe flavors to people that don't have the like palate?
I'm trying to figure this out.
Vocabulary, because I know we were going to discuss like coffee trends, and I think that's like kind of important. And I was thinking about coffee and music, and like the way that I try and describe not just flavors of things, but other stuff too, is like to relate it to a graph of like an audio wave, mm-hmm. and like compare it to different parts of the frequency spectrum. So like this one is like a nice, like low and high mid, like not much bass, not too much treble. It's just nice and focused and full.
That's I've never heard of anyone equating it to an audio spectrum, which to me, I could completely understand being from like an audio engineering background. So you saying it's like, a high, would you say a high like to low
high
mid?
And low mid, just like a nice little bump over that region. And then like a nice,
like a 250-ish, like 250 to 300.
I was going to say even more like a really wide Q, like really wide Q, like from like 250 to like 3K, just a nice gentle bump. And then like a high and a low pass filters to cut out some of the extra jazz you don't need.
Just scooched all the way in. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I can definitely see that. That's just like a nice middle of the road comfort drinking coffee, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So this Ethiopian for sure is definitely like what a nice kick drum sound would be. So you take a little bit out of that 130, a little bit out at 500, and then maybe you give a little bell at like 50, 60 to 50 hertz and just let it thump.
Let it resonate.
Yeah. That's
nice.
That was a really interesting I'm going to have to work on that now, but trying to describe it to just completely non-audio, non-coffee people, I have to be like, you don't taste, like pomegranate in there. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess like you're saying, it's all about palate and taste and, I had to train myself. I'm sure you were the same. You had to learn.
It's absolutely like anything else. Like my partner, she will tell you that she hates my coffee, but she drinks it anyway. She always mixes it into like milk or whatever, and they're so good. But she doesn't like it just black. But mm-hmm. It's crazy how much you can also accentuate like just a flavor that's already so crazy if you really dive deep into it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's what I've been finding too, especially with a lot of this new trends in processing coffee. It's just they've kind of gone above and beyond in bringing out a lot of like these strange, like fermented flavors. I've gotten really big recently, which I'm still kind of trying to find what I like in that. But yeah, definitely that like anaerobic coffees, these honey processed coffees that some people, especially in Montreal, there's like some experimental kind of roasteries that are doing it. And they're like yellow honey, red honey. It's like crazy, the spectrum of processing now to get all of these what weren't really desirable flavors probably 30 years ago are now just what everybody wants. So yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from on that. I like Black Sheep because it to me, like I always expect an Ethiopian is just going to be like, oh, it's going to be really fruity, floral, like, you know, crazy. But to me, this tastes extremely balanced, which is sometimes like a nice surprise when I'm in this world of just drinking weird coffees all the time.
Yeah, man, it was nerve wracking. Like, oh man, I don't know what flavor he's going to like. Like, some people love dark roasts or just hate them. I don't find that there's not a lot of people that are like, I'll have them sometimes. Like, I don't know. But so I'm glad that you like that. Lucas, the guy who runs Black Sheep and owns it, is very, very much into the art of his coffee because he knows every possible bit of information that you could about the beans he's roasting. Like, he visits the farms and makes sure he has good connections with the people actually creating the base material for this like extracted water drink that we have at the end of it.
Right.
And he has so many flavors, man, and they're all so good. If you like dark roast coffees, he has a couple of really good ones at Dark Affair, I think. Oh no, that's a different local. Excuse me. Sorry, Lucas. I forgot the name of your dark roast. I also had Balzac's coffee recently, which is another Southern Ontario thing. But where I'm from, the city of Welland, it's like a really small place in Niagara. It's like 50,000 people. And we just happen to have this guy who's dedicated to roasting all kinds of different coffees. And he also has a cafe that's been closed for a while because of the pandemic. But he had like musical performances there. So he hangs local artists' art and everything. So like, big shout out to Lucas for providing like an art space as well as having this awesome place to enjoy drinks that you have to keep going back for because they're so good that you don't understand it at first.
I love that somebody takes the time and reading the bag and a little bit on the website. He definitely has, Lucas, he has this like diehard kind of coffee culture vibe, but in the sense of supporting the community. And I just talked to another artist. His episode is out now, but he works in the coffee industry and does a lot in the community as well, where he does like benefits and throws on shows and, you know, works with like nonprofits and homeless shelters and stuff like that to raise money. And I feel like supporting the community all the way up the chain in specialty coffee is just like what makes that kind of what it is. Like, so knowing your farms, knowing your farmers, you know, going and visiting and just knowing the economy of it all the way to that local community. And the fact that he's in, you know, a small place, but still loves it enough to not just be like, oh, we'll just dump a bunch of sugar and some, you know, like Tim Hortons knockoff coffee. Because you could probably be successful in a small community with that as well. But the fact that he takes the time to invest in art and, you know, perfect his craft, that is what I feel like specialty coffee is all about, supporting the community and supporting art and really just, you know, being like a hub of culture for even a smaller town.
And how does it differ? Like the coffee culture in Niagara is so vastly different than it would be in such a metropolitan place like Montreal, I bet. Like, what's it like out there? Like, how many different choices do you have for specialty roasteries and cafes and crazy?
I try to taste a different Quebec or Montreal roastery for every week, unless people send me coffee. And in that case, like, I definitely will try to drink theirs and talk about it. But I haven't run out, and I've been doing this for 7 months. I've done one episode a week for 7 months. Wow. I'm on episode 30. This will be episode 32. So there's at least 32 roasteries in Quebec. And I haven't even tried the rest of them. So in terms of shops, like, I could probably throw a rock and hit 5 shops that each serve different coffee, like roasters and stuff like that. We have the Roasting Society here as well, which is like, it's a co-op. It's run by a guy named Scott Rowell. who is kind of big in the coffee industry, along with another guy named Andy Tunnel. And they basically rent out space for like micro roasteries in town. They schedule their roasting. So they have like 1 or 2 roasters in this building, and they all kind of just work together to make really nice coffees. So there's That's like awesome. Just a ton of great I didn't really invest into coffee culture as much until I moved to Montreal and discovered how just deep and vast it is. So I had worked in coffee and loved it, but Montreal has really ignited a love to like learn more about it. So
yeah, part of me wishes when I worked at Starbucks that I took the Coffee Masters program a little bit more seriously, but working at Starbucks is awful. And then I just never, the switch in my brain turned on. And then everything that I do or want has to be like of a certain quality because of what I believe in. So coffee, especially, it's like, it's so cool to know that there's somebody near you or that's actually part of your local economy doing something that provides you with a pleasurable experience. And also in some cases, like when, we have these routines in the morning, a moment of peace of mind, and like providing, it's so silly, but it's just like providing the beans and the means for us to do that is so awesome. Like, thank God that we have local coffee roasters.
Yes. Like I think during the pandemic, it was really something of a security, like a certainty, honestly, where the rest of the world, like jobs and things are not certain, but like waking up in the morning and knowing that like I can boil the water, I can grind these beans, and I'm going to get like something that's really delicious. Like having that structure and that routine every morning during the pandemic, I think really brought a lot of like security and peace. So definitely, being able to invest time and have something that we're able to like bring home and brings us comfort and peace in the morning, like you said, is extremely important for a lot of people. Yeah.
I'm still here. I just don't know how to continue because I'm just feeling such gratitude for coffee roasters.
I know. Let's just take a moment of silence for coffee roasters. We can get into the music side if you'd like. I don't get to deep dive into like talking a lot about like Montreal coffee and stuff like that. And like, I don't get to talk to a lot of people that love just dishing about coffee. So I'm very happy about that. But on the music side, you're from the Niagara area. What was your introduction to heavy music?
Like in terms of the local music scene, I ended up being introduced to it in my teenage years through people like peers at school or whatever, and going to shows and slowly getting into it and understanding its structure because, it's more or less an underground like economy or business in some senses of its own.
Right.
And, when you're young too, you don't understand things in certain ways until you're older, but like, it's weird because I got into the local scene at the tail end of its like peak in my area. Like Welland used to be a pretty upbeat place for a lot of underground, like indie rock, hardcore, punk, whatever, like Niagara region at least, and all over, like in the MySpace era. And then, I didn't join until later, like early 2010s. And it's interesting that you say it's kind of divided because it does feel that way. Like everything is slowly fragmenting as time progresses. Like it sucks, but it's still there. It's just knowing how to navigate the new territory because COVID really like messed up everything. Like trying to book those shows that we ended up meeting at was a nightmare. Like so many cities have just completely closed multiple venues. Like even Montreal, it's sad. And in Niagara, we've slowly lost them over time. Like there was this one house that this this person in Bones ran, and she lived there. And there's like potlucks and art shows, and then like she had shows in the basement. And it's always just a good time, and that's gone. And we had a lot of other local venues in St. Catharines, mostly that have been run by primarily the same like group of people, Indoor Shoes, which was this dude named Timmer and Eric. They always put things together, and now Eric is more or less on his own. I haven't seen Timmer in a very long time, but he's running a venue and a like a bar and taco joint and keeping it afloat. But there's no like underground crusty stuff anymore, which is a shame, because that's like I yearn for that.
I feel like that's honestly in those crusty, dingy, DIY spaces is where the scene really finds its feet and thrives. I know that there's been division and stuff like that, especially even, in Montreal, and I've seen kind of in the US, like people have become more polarized politically. And so that seems to divide up, all of the aspects of their life for some reason. But I was seeing that y'all played the Distorted Roots Fest, which I think was some kind of like, not attempt, but its mission was to try to unite the scene and, bridge kind of groups of fan bases together. Is that something that you guys continue to try to be a part of?
It's interesting that you point to that specifically, because I feel like since I've been involved in the music scene, is that there's always been these attempts to unite everybody through different festivals like that. Like there was one that happened in the one jam space we had in Welland in the basement. Mm-hmm. My band had like an upper floor space, but in the basement there's this massive concrete room, and there's a jam space down there, and they had shows called like Unity Fest and stuff like that, like really explicitly getting the message out there. Like, and then, Distorted Roots is another attempt for that, but on the metal side of things. And I love that stuff. It's so much more fun to go to a bill of varied genres and be exposed to people you would never ever see at a show, and you get to see things you never would see otherwise. And that's way more fun than just going to a hardcore or a metal show or whatever, where everything is not like expected, but like you have some type of vague prejudice of what it's going to be like before you get there.
Right.
I love that stuff. Like even that show that we met at in Montreal was really interesting, because it kind of ended up being like that, which is strange.
Like a mini fest almost.
Yeah. Like I was in contact with the bar manager and booking the show, and I knew there was another gig, and then we found out maybe a month after booking it that their show was going to be free. So instead of just being like, yeah, we're the smaller show and it's $10, or you could go to this massive free show, we're just like, well, if you can just walk back and forth between the shows, that's the best ever. So we just let it happen. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of chaotic at times, but I'm glad that it happened nonetheless.
It was definitely one of my favorite show experiences I've had in Montreal since moving here.
I always want to have a good time at a show. That's the only thing I care about. Like playing is off, but hanging out and laughing with your friends is one of the greatest feelings that you can have.
Right.
And if there's an environment that facilitates that also happens to be a show, that is the best.
Definitely. That's a great way of putting it.
I love it.
That's great.
Yeah, like, and now we're in this like quasi lockdown again, and it's just awful.
I hate it. I'm so extroverted, and I think I've slowly been turning into a pseudo introvert now, just from having to be home and not around people very much. But like, there's a part of me that just wants to do stuff all the time, like a dog. I just want to go outside. Let's talk a little bit about Kawthra. You guys released Tenets in early 2021, and were able to tour a bit, play some shows during the pandemic. What was all of that experience like, having to release and then kind of tour around and play some shows, like just in and out of lockdowns?
Well, so that of songs we were writing in 2019. Mm-hmm. And we finished them at the end of that year, and went to record them at the beginning of 2020 in February, with Sean at Boxcar Studios in Hamilton. And we finished those sessions and everything was looking great and the sun was shining on us and everything was great. And then we finished the mixes, or we were in the process of mixing it rather. And then the whole world just caved in on itself because of the pandemic. And so obviously all plans anybody ever had were just placed on indefinite halt. So we sat on these songs for almost a year before releasing them and didn't really practice much, didn't really do anything because the despair was so deep. And so we just, reluctantly released them in 2021 and hoped that we could play some shows. And luckily we got to play a little bit, but it was a strange experience because by the time we were actually showcasing them to the public live, we were kind of like over them in some ways, like they're so old and these ideas have just been in the band like psyche for 2 years. So we're just fully jumping headfirst into writing new stuff now and just making that the focus. So that way, maybe later this year when things aren't so bad, hopefully, and into 2023, we can actually realize the vision that we started to have when we were working on that release. Yeah.
I had been going back in the band feed and seeing that you guys finished recording like in February of 2020. And I was like, wow, that is really just like, what a momentum killer to have all of these like songs that you're super stoked about ready to release. And then for the foreseeable future, you just kind of have to sit on that. And I know how eventually sick of those songs you can get. Like whenever you jam, you're just jamming those. So I really hope that later this year and then into next year, we're able to kind of find a rhythm, because that's like the story of a lot of even, bigger bands where they're releasing albums in 2020, 2021, haven't even been able to tour on them. So I know that was probably really hard on you guys, but I'm really trying to be optimistic like you are that, we'll be able to kind of start moving forward again later this year.
Yeah, exactly. Like I know that your band put out music too. I checked it out. It was pretty sick. And God, yeah, just good luck to everybody. Yeah. Like that's the truest thing I can say.
And that's like even talking to some like artists that are touring a lot more, like they've been more established and they're assigned to, larger labels, and then hearing them release like full lengths that these labels have put, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars into, and haven't seen anything come back from it yet. And they're just sitting on it. They're like, we don't even like those songs anymore.
Yeah.
So I good luck to everybody for real. Like, I really hope that we're able to kind of push through this and if not, get back to normal, find out what the new version of that is. I think that's a good goal for the future.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting decade.
Yes.
Like there's also the online aspect of everything. And man, we are as a band, we are very bad in that area of things like social media and stuff like that. I've never downloaded TikTok. I'm not like trying to flex that or anything. I just don't know how to use it.
Right.
But I definitely watch TikTok on my girlfriend's phone. So I know about that world, but I don't want that to be a responsibility of mine.
Right.
And for the band, like Instagram's enough, but man, it's such a strange territory to navigate.
Yes. It seems like, in person, the world has been standing still, but online it's fully developing, fully evolving.
I know by the time we play shows next, I'm going to have to like accept cryptocurrency and also like sell an NFT at the show with a QR code.
There's no physical merch. All of our merch are NFT downloads, and we only have 5 blockchains available. But it costs like 7 Dogecoin.
You know what though? That might revolutionize the way that bands can tour, because if you could actually set that up and people would be willing to give you whatever cryptocurrency, going over the border and stuff like that without physical merch would be amazing. Yeah. Anyway, that's a topic for another.
We'll huddle in on that one later. Well, Josh, I really appreciate you hanging out with me, talking about music and coffee. And it was such a pleasure to be able to, catch up after the show and what seemed like a panicked couple of weeks there. But I really appreciate it. I just have one last question before we go.
Let her rip.
What is your favorite city for beans and breakdowns?
My favorite city for beans and breakdowns. I have to shout out the Rose City, Welland, Ontario, forever for beans. I will be a Black Sheep fan till I die, simply because I live and ride for my city.
That's a gangster as hell, bro.
For breakdowns, I don't know, man. People have breakdowns. I've heard all kinds of them. I think if I actually had to pick one, I would say Buffalo, New York. When I was younger, I went to the funeral home pretty often with my friends for shows. That was the best time of my life. So I'm going to stick with that answer, Buffalo, New York. Even now, people still are coming out of there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Buffalo scene has always been kind of legendary in underground music. So yeah, I could see that one for sure. Plus, you're right there, right?
Exactly.
So
it's so nice.
Almost local.
Quasi-local.
There we go.
Yeah.
Let's just branch the whole Niagara. Let's get an international Niagara scene together.
Absolutely.
That'd be dope. Well, Josh, again, really appreciate it. I wish you and Kawthra and the rest of your music projects all the best, in this coming year. Hopefully we don't have to wait too long to meet up at a show or see each other in person soon. But, I really do wish you guys luck.
Yeah, likewise. All those sentiments right back at you, my friend. I'm glad we got to reconnect as well. And I'm looking forward to the future as well. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Be well and enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
See you soon, buddy. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beans and Breakdowns. I want to say a huge thanks to Josh for coming out on the podcast and hanging out with me. Be sure to check out the latest EP from Kawthra, The Tenets, on all listening platforms. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. You can also find out more information about Beans and Breakdowns by following us on Instagram at Beans and Breakdowns or following us on the web at beansandbreakdowns.com. Until next week, stay caffeinated and wake the fuck up.